My name is Leonie Hermantin, and I am the Director of Communication, Development, and Planning at Satla Haitian Neighborhood Center. Um, my relationship with the Women's Funds of Miami-Dade started over 20 years ago as the Executive Director of the now defunct Haitian American Foundation. Someone told me about this great opportunity. I had just come to Miami um, with my own ideas of what feminism was. I didn't call myself a feminist. I call myself a womanist, in deference to sort of the Black women tradition of women empowerment. And so I was in charge of a program of youth. I was doing a lot of pregnancy prevention. And I had the bright idea to apply for a fund that would focus on boys because I did, and I still profoundly believe that you cannot deal with girls in isolation when it comes to sexuality, and that boys have to be educated as well. So I applied to the Women's Fund, and of course, I was my application was declined, and that upset me a lot. I have to say that my first engagement with the Women's Fund was I was not a happy camper because I felt that based on my experience, boys needed to learn to respect women, women's bodies, and there were no comparable men's organizations. So that was the beginning. And of course, throughout the years, I began to become more involved with the work, more involved with the issues, more importantly, and the impact of organizations, underground organizations supported by the Women's Fund, who are truly making a difference in the lives of women, girls, and boys. Because when you impact mothers, you impact, there's no discrimination on gender when you're making the family a more solid, a more stable family. So needless to say that my opinion sort of evolved over the years, and I became much more appreciative of the work of the Women's Fund. As I said before, my understanding of gender-focused issues has evolved over the years. I was one who did, and to some extent still believe, that we cannot deal with ourselves in isolation, simply because of the central role that we play as women in our families. And so, as I said before, the collective mission resonates with me in the sense that once you stabilize women, when you take them out of oppressive, abusive relationships, once you empower women, they become incredible role models for their children, regardless of gender. When you begin to plant the seeds of power, of self actualization with girls, you prepare them to be more productive, to be less vulnerable, and again, that has an impact on all, not just on women, not just on girls, but the impact is just universal. It's exponential. Once you empower girls and you empower women, the impact on society, yes, is exponential. It reaches all levels and all crevices. So that's what resonates with me, that it doesn't remain in isolation. It does have an impact on all members of society. What anecdote stands out for me personally about the impact of the organization? I have to say that this is the first time that uh, that I have, I'm in an organization that has been funded by the Women's Fund, and I have to say that again, when you get funded by the Women's Fund, you really think that the impact is going to be exclusively on women or a certain type of women, right? Or a certain type of organization. And I don't know if it's an anecdote, but for me, support of the Women's Fund has opened my eyes actually in terms of collaboration. We're Sadla, we're huge believers in collaboration. And, for me, as the person who engages partners, who seeks new partners, my world, my universe was mostly the not-for-profit world. And so through the Women's Fund support and focusing on owners and workers in early childhood centers, that has really opened our horizon in terms of new partnerships that evolve around children's education, around employment issues, employment readiness, and advocacy. So it may not be an anecdote, but I have to say that the Women's Fund, the support that we're getting, has truly expanded our horizon and encouraged us to identify new assets as we are always drawing our asset maps. You have helped us identify incredible and important assets in our community. We've lived, for the past, I would say 5-6 years, in an environment where attacks on women, on the focus on our bodies, attempts to control our bodies can no longer be explained away, can no longer be ignored, can no longer be made less of a priority than other human rights that we defend. And so knowing that the Women's Fund is an organization focused on the specificity of things that matter to us is really empowering for me. Knowing, for example, increasingly through my work, being increasingly exposed to victims of domestic violence, women who feel absolutely powerless. What we do here in terms of when we work really hard to connect women who feel powerless, women who have been victimized, who still internalize the victimization. When, we try everything to assist them, at least in the back of my mind, when everything else seems to be ineffective, I always have in the back of my mind the fact that there is a Women's Fund here, because the Women's Fund for me is not just about funding. It's not just about grant giving, especially the new Women's Fund. I have to say, I had some issues, I had some issues, but I have to say that the new Women's Fund to me, is just more than a funder, but it is that women centered collaborative of fighters, of humanists who are there as resources and almost like a safety net for me. It's almost like a safety net. I know in the back of my mind that I can always look to the Women's Fund to advise, to guide beyond grants, but with connections, with women on the board, with women volunteers who are just powerful women who believe in our rights to be human beings, to be treated as human beings. It's a good feeling to know that there is an organization there that I can turn to, that we can turn to say, what should we do in this case? Who is out there that can help this client? So, yeah. So, beyond, as I said, beyond grants, that's the most important things to me, that I know that there are women who care, women who will not turn you away because they say, well, that's not really part of my portfolio. When women are affected, when women are hurting, we know that the Women's Fund cares. I just want to say, I put my red glasses on as an homage to the new leadership at the Women's Fund. I have to say that again, with a 25-year plus perspective, I am thrilled. I am so happy that the red glasses are back with all the beautiful, the wonderful, uplifting messages, action-driven work, funding opportunities that these red glasses have brought. So thank you, Women's Fund, for coming back on the right track. You are making such an impact, and we are just happy to serve, to work with you, and to continue your message of women's empowerment.